Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to one of the series of WPD's webinars on providing information for local government authorities, local enterprise partnerships and other interested stakeholders. We're going to be kicking off the webinar very shortly, but now's the time just to sort of get settled in, make sure that everyone's on time for this session, make sure they can hear everything clearly, and all the IT's working. So we just give people a chance to go and get settled in and sorted now. And I'll go through a little bit of housekeeping. So I'm Ben Godfrey. I'm the Network Strategy Manager for Western Power Distribution. And on today's webinar, myself and my colleague Sharon McGuffey will be going through the information that we've got on our Energy Data Hub, what it's for, the information that you can access there, and then we're going to do a deeper dive on some of the interactive cost tools and strategic investment as well. So hopefully this should be a good insight into the information that WPD provides, why we're providing that information, and how you might be able to use that in the future as well. So we've got a few people online now, so we're going to proceed without any further delay. The session, you're able to ask questions at any particular time you want. There's a question functionality within this GoToWebinar program. So please feel free to fire through questions at any time, and we'll try and answer them as we go through. There's a section at the end of today's webinar where we can pause for questions as well if you want to wait to the end. And we'll try and get through as many of those Q&As as possible, but if there are any that we can't, I don't get time to discuss today, or any that don't have any answers for, we'll make sure that we get those answers to those questions and provide a response back up on the website. We'll also make available these recordings as well, so that if you want to review them later on or want to direct your colleagues to them at another particular time, then they're hosted up on YouTube and you can view them at your convenience. We're trying to get the slides and recording up on the website from about the 2nd as well. So I'm going to go through just today's overview on data sharing, and then Sharon's going to dive into the Energy Data Hub, and then I'll wrap it up with a deeper dive into the interactive cost tools and strategic investments. So data sharing with the local government authorities and enterprise partnerships, we believe it's a really good way of enabling a better approach and a better whole systems approach to local energy planning. And by sharing that information and engaging better with some of our local stakeholders, that should help reduce costs and enable us to realise the benefits of some of this clean energy transition. So the Energy Data Task Force was set up by Ofgem in October 2018, and it's led by the Energy Systems Catapult, and that really looked at investigating how to release the power of data within the energy system. So there's a number of recommendations that came out of that particular group, and that was really to try and understand how you can unlock data from the energy system, and try and allow that to drive innovation into new products and services, and then that should produce a more cost-effective system that works for the consumer. So some real big worthy outputs there for why we should be pursuing this data sharing. And in order to build upon that, WPD has launched our Energy Data Hub. So we launched this towards the end of last year, and this is the one-stop shop really of where all of our information and data can be held. It's really trying to funnel people into a number of specific areas and allow them to view the data and keep on track of any new data streams that we might be making available to our various different stakeholders. And hopefully the aims of the Energy Data Hub are just to mirror exactly what the Energy Data Task Force wants to as well. So unlocking the value of that data, driving the innovation, and producing more efficient outcomes as well. So Sharon has been instrumental in pulling together all the information on the Energy Data Hub. She's going to go over some of the areas which exist within that hub at the moment and provide a little bit more detail. So over to you, Sharon.
Thank you. The Energy Data Hub acts as a repository for all of the data that we currently share within the hub with our stakeholders. There are 4 key areas where data information can be found: systems and network data, costs and charging, low carbon technologies, and strategic information. Firstly, systems and network data. This is where WPD shares information and data related to our network assets and system operation. With so many different mapping systems shared, it made sense to create a mapping hub which encompasses all of our shared mapping information in one place. Within the mapping hub, you'll find live power cuts map, network capacity map, network flexibility map, electric high voltage map, electric vehicle capacity map, constraint maps, and investment map. Signposting. Signposting information will direct flexibility providers to different distribution needs. Statement of works. This is a request to National Grid Electric regarding the impact of a connection of embedded generation connection on their system. Data Portal 2, which is an online service where stakeholders have access to WPD asset data and EMU. Alternative connections. Where the network has reached its capacity, customer could be offered an alternative connection whilst reinforcement is installed. Generation capacity register. This is a list of generators connected to WPD network. Generation outage report. This is a summary of lost generation due to constraints in 2018 in megawatts. Secondly, costs and charging. This is a sharing of data relating to connection and use of system chargers, where you will find connection charging statements. These statements cover terms and conditions relating to new connections, alterations, including generation. Use of system chargers. Here you will find data and information for electric suppliers and other major users with regards to the use of our system, metering, etc. Facilitating the share of information for potential generation connection consortiums. Here you will find information regarding the potential sharing of connection charges in area as a consortium rather than as an individual, sharing the cost of reinforcement or connection charges. Interactive cost tools. These are tools which are available to help you budget for the cost of obtaining electricity connections for your development. Thirdly, low carbon technologies data. The amount of low carbon technology connecting to our network is growing. This section on the Energy Data Hub contains more information on how we are enabling this, sharing our data on electric vehicle strategy, ensuring that drivers of electric vehicles are able to charge their vehicles in a convenient way. Electric vehicle connection guide. Here you will find information regarding the quickest, most efficient and economical way of connecting charging points to electric vehicles. Carbon Tracer. This is a project that is delivered via an app that uses real live data to calculate what actually contributes to the locally generated energy that powers electric items in your home. Strategic investment data. Here stakeholders can find out what we are doing to build a smarter system and how we are investing to meet the future needs of our customers. Sharing data on distribution future energy scenarios, where you will find reports that outline the growth of the distribution system. Distribution system operators, DSO, which is the mapping out of the transition from a DNO to a DSO. Long-term development. Here you will find data that has been compiled to assist current and future use of WPD's network to identify and assess opportunities available to you for making new or additional use of our distribution system. Flexible power. This is where you will find the data and information which we share with stakeholders, creating partnerships that generate income for local businesses and which can enable us to accommodate increasing demand for electricity without having to build a larger network.
Excellent, thanks for that, Sharon. So now we're going to dive down into some of the interactive cost tools, which are one of the sections that Sharon just went through within our Energy Data Hub. So our interactive cost tools come in sort of two flavors. One, the first section is a series of fixed costs and indicative charges to understand and get a guide price for obtaining an electricity connection for your development. And the second one is a proper interactive cost tool where you can type in a bit more information, provide a bit further detail about the type of connection that you require, and we will provide, again, an indicative cost based on that details that you've provided. So the guide price tool allows you to, when you're not ready to submit an application, but you want to know the potential costs for connecting. So when you're doing high-level feasibility studies, or just trying to go and get a little bit more of a feel for what type of connection you might need and what the costs for obtaining that connection might be, then our guide price tables set out the average prices for those particular connection scenarios. So if you click on the guide price tools in the interactive cost tools section of our Energy Data Hub, then you can have a look at the guide price tables. So we've got three sections here: fixed price works, service alterations, and new demand connections. And if you click those particular context menus, then a little drop down opens up. And so for the fixed price works, you can see here the three different sections. It's taken from our website fairly recently. So you can see installing a PME, which is protectable multiple earth, or installing a single phase isolator or a three phase isolator. These are fixed price activities that we can undertake on your behalf, and those are the costs associated with providing that particular service. For the service alterations, again, if you clicked on the drop down box there, then typically service alteration comes in at 995, and we have a guaranteed standard of 5 days to be able to respond to your request. But our average time to receive for you to receive a quotation is actually 1 day, so it's quite a quick turnaround. And you can go from requesting that service to actually receiving that service within about 4 weeks, from 4 weeks time after payment as well. So again, that gives you a bit of an indication about the timescales and the lead times that you might need to build within just a single basic service alteration. For new demand connections, again, a lot more detail into that. And if you click on the drop-down box on the website, you can see all these prices yourself. But they have the guaranteed standards, so how long we are required to provide an answer to you for, the average time that it takes to receive that particular quotation, the average prices, the variety in prices, and then the kind of lead times associated with that connection as well. The guaranteed standard is there. If we don't meet that standard, then we will make a voluntary payment to you as well. So we're really putting our money where our mouth is in terms of meeting those standards. Secondly, we've got the interactive cost tool. Then this provides an estimated charge for the development. It requires a bit more information from you. So where your required connection is it in an urban or a rural setting, the type of connection, is it for a domestic or commercial, the number of connections required, the capacity for each required commercial connection, and then the distance from the nearest network, and the number of minor road crossings between that existing network. So you can see from other tools where our nearest cable is, and that will give you a bit of an estimation about how long the service length might be, to provide us with a bit more of a detailed cost assessment for your inquiry. And the next slide here is a visualization of the interactive costing tool. So you can put all the different options in here, and hopefully you can see the bottom of that underneath the blue button gives the price. So for an urban connection, for a domestic urban connection, a single domestic urban connection, which might be 20 meters from the existing mains and require no road crossings, then you're looking at a cost of about 1,938 spot 50. So on to the strategic network investment. So the reasons why we focus on strategic network investment is that it gives us lots more detail about local plans, and it helps us to ensure that we are both catering for local plans, but also giving visibility back to local planning teams that we're making these investments. We'll cover a little bit about the details of the aims of approaches for our investment planning work, and we can also cover what else we're doing to help facilitate growth as well. So from BEIS, there is a significant publication on the clean growth strategy that came out, I think, last year, and one of the sources that discusses is about the ensuring that we've got a secure and affordable and clean power supplies, and that means that we need to develop low carbon sources of electricity that are both cheap and clean, but in doing so we still need to maintain a secure network, and it may mean that we need to plan the network and operate the network differently using different technologies such as storage, flexibility, and control of smart control of the network to be able to deliver all those types of things. That's something that we're committed to doing within WPD. To give an idea or scale of the challenge, this graph here shows the emissions. So in the darker green band, these are the emissions to date, and then the predicted lighter green band are the types of emissions that we think we might need to go and get to towards 2032, and then we've got a further indicative range out to 2050. So we've made some good progress on decarbonising the energy system to date, but we need to go a lot further, a lot quicker over the next few years to really reach those 2032 and 2050 scenarios. And that will manifest itself quite differently across the different licence areas. So WPD operates 4 different licence areas: the South West, South Wales, West Midlands and East Midlands. And here you can see the green numbers are most rapid decarbonisation pathway and how much additional demand there might be. So the demand is in, the generation is in green, and the red is the demand, and that increases in red there. So you can see for each different area, some of them have lots more generation, some of them have lots more demand as well, and some of them are dominated by one of those particular technologies. So out to 2030, say in the East Midlands, we're expecting an extra 180% of additional demand. So we really need to make sure that our network is focused to be able to accommodate all that demand from electric vehicles, from decarbonisation of heating, while simultaneously we see a doubling of the amount of generation that we've got in the East Midlands there. So lots of change for how we need to plan and augment the network as well. So we do some strategic studies to be able to help inform some of the options that we might need to take. So that allows us to look at the level of customer-driven demands and generation type on the network, and we profile that by year as well. And we see what types of new connections might be coming onto our network. We then overlay that with our existing network to identify whether there are any thermal, voltage and fault level constraints. And we ensure that security of supply is maintained, but by doing so, we assess some options for conventional reinforcement, and this provides some recommendations for low regret investment. So basically, we look at what the network might need to do, we look at which of those scenarios are most probable, and which of the investment decisions are least likely to be regretted. So which investment decisions do we have the most confidence in that are actually going to be used across the period of time that we're assessing. And then we also feed into the pot any other kind of reinforcement avoidance techniques such as flexibility, demand side response, and we start attaching some figures for energy to size up the types of flexibility that we might need to try and stimulate some more markets in that area for flexibility. So we've got a basic process for strategic investment. So one is looking at all the generation demand technologies along with our growth scenarios. Then two, we model that on our network model to try and understand where the constraints might be. Thirdly, we assess the options, both conventional and alternative options. And then step four, we present the business case. So step one, all the demand generation technology growth assessments, that comes out into our DFES, which is our distribution future energy scenarios. They're published on the website. And then our step four, present the business case and options, is in our shaping subtransmission work. And both of these publications are available on our website, one for each license area, to be able to download. So previous outputs there, these are all our DFES documents, and they are accompanied by each of the different shaping subtransmission reports as well. So they highlight at a high level the reinforcement constraints, the network constraints, and then they also discuss some of the reinforcement techniques that we might need to make. So you can see here, this is the latest output for the West Midlands. We can see that from 2020 to 2025, there is some level of reinforcement that is required for certain future energy scenarios. Some of those grid supply points are going to be more heavily constrained between 2020 and 2025. And we will already have plans in place for that time period for investing in the network, and they'll be being undertaken as we speak. But you can see out to 2025, when we've got a lot more LCTs, low carbon technologies hitting the network, then much more intervention is required across a greater number of different areas. So we feel by providing a bit more visibility about what might need to be required and when that might need to be required, we can help stakeholders and understand how concerned they need to be about capacity and availability in those particular areas. And we make all this data available. So at the moment, this data is available on request, but by the end of March, we will have developed our website to be able to provide all this information self-serve. So you'll be able to, all the local authorities will be able to click on a local area of our map. It will draw the local authority boundary, and it will provide data for the types of technologies that we think are going to be connecting in that area, and the kind of energy profile, the energy mix that we are foreseeing over the next few years. So that'll give some important volumes about the types of electric vehicles, heat pumps that we think will be connecting to each of the individual local authority areas. And hopefully that can inform either future energy scenarios, energy strategies, and will also go to inform our business case as well. So the timetable for this work is really on a rolling six monthly basis across 4 licensed areas. So we do this work over a 2-year time period, but essentially we usually kick off these strategic studies with a workshop, inviting local stakeholders to come along. We explain the process that we're undertaking and the options that we're going to be considering. Then we go away, we do the network analysis, and it usually takes us about sort of 3 months to try and input that into our model and undertake all that network studies. We then do a bit of a sensitivity analysis to see how much headroom might be made available and what the types of solutions, how they might be able to feed into that. We then spend a further month on looking at the types of options for demand response or generation to alleviate those constraints, and then we complete the report, publish it on our website, and then the following month we do a kind of mop-up dissemination webinar. I think 15th of August there was one we did previous to that, and a series of those is timetabled on our website as well. So in terms of investment, the timing of investment on our network is really crucial. So we spend about £1 billion a year on repairing, maintaining and upgrading our network, and that costs each household in our area about 27 pence per day. So fairly low cost for each individual household, but definitely a very high cost when you take into account the absolute figures of that. Now, our revenue is tied to our asset base value, so how much copper we've got in the ground, how many overhead lines, underground cables, transformers, how much of that we've got connected and working for us on our network. And so it's in our interest to have a high value network. But of course, we're a natural monopoly, and so it wouldn't be right for us just to put lots of transformers and cables connecting onto the network without that really being justified. And so that's what the regulator is there to do. They justify our investment, make sure that we're doing the right things in the area and not just building out network for network's sake so that we make more money. And the regulator does this by a number of ways. They fix our investment window, and they decide on the level of investment, or they agree the level of expenditure that we can make on a network. At the moment, we're in the middle of towards the end of our 8-year period, which finishes in 2023, and our next regulatory period will be the RIIO-2 period, which is in 2023 to 2028. But if we don't spend the money that we have allocated to us, it's not just the fact that we get to keep the money. If we don't spend the money will be recouped and recovered by the regulator. So we're very much incentivized for justifying a proper business case, building the network out and spending that money. But equally, if we were to make investment on the network that wasn't justifiable, then the regulator can come back in and disallow that expenditure and take that money back off of us. So it's not just the money that we don't spend. If we've made an expenditure in for the wrong reasons, then the regulator can take that money back off of us, and so we would have to stump the cost of those disallowed expenditure just through our business. So there's a clear incentive on us for doing the right things at the right time and doing them efficiently as well. So strategic investment, which is doing work ahead of need, if that increases, it also increases the cost of us operating and running our network, and that cost is shared across all customers, including the fuel poor and the vulnerable. So there is a definite balancing act by us and by the regulator to make sure that A, we're ensuring that there's sufficient capacity across the network, but we're doing so in such a way where the burden is shared fairly across all customers, and it is done so to minimise the bill impact of all customers across the area. Uncertainty of our future system needs means that we have to be very prudent when it comes to investing ahead of need, and to do so we really require financial contribution from people if they are identified as being as triggering this reinforcement or benefiting significantly from this reinforcement. And this comes into cost allocation. So distribution connection charges are what we call shallowish. So that little picture there shows the network on the right hand side. Then if you were to say what a deep connection charge would be, then that means that the customer who's connecting not only pays for charges for the existing network, but they also pay, it's good with working right from left, they pay for the charges for the existing network, for the new connection assets, for the existing infrastructure on the same voltage level, and any connections above that, for one voltage level above that. And then the far left box as well is any existing infrastructure and 2 voltage levels above that as well. So that's what's called a deep connection charge. Now, that is not what we do on the distribution network. We employ the middle one here, which is shallowish connection charges. So you still have to pay for some of the existing infrastructure, your new connection assets, and you pay for 1 voltage level above, and the same voltage level and 1 voltage level above. But you don't have to pay for the reinforcement that is much further upstream, that gets socialised across everybody. But there's also another option there, this shallow connection charge, which is the bottom option, whereby people would only pay for the new connection assets to go and get connected onto the network. So distribution charges at the moment are just shallowish. So you have to pay for your new connection assets and the same voltage level or voltage level above, and that's cost apportioned as well. We can see by the table at the bottom, then that the reinforcement costs triggered by new connections and actually paid for across the whole of the UK only amount to about £34 million worth of charges directly paid for by individuals across the whole of the UK in 2018 and 2019. So in terms of how much we actually reinforce the network by, it's quite a small percentage, so 34 million out of a much bigger pot. But of course, it's still potentially prohibitive if those costs fall to just a single individual. So we recognise that it can be a barrier in some circumstances. So Ofgem is looking at the different options at the moment, whether they want to move to a deep connection charge, a shallowish or shallower, or real shallow charge. These are all options that the regulator is considering at the moment underneath the SCR, which is their significant code review. The options are being developed at the moment, and they are hoping, or they shall be going out to consultation by the middle of 2020 of what the options are, and then they will decide towards the early 2021 about which pathway they take forward. So if you do have any strong views about particular schemes that have been prohibited because of these upfront connection costs, and you feel that the way things are done at the moment is a barrier to new development, then definitely keep involved with the Ofgem's significant code review. You can go on their website, you can have a look at the transmission and distribution significant code review. I think there's a notify me email button there that you can click on there, so any new documents that come through will be notified to you, and so when that consultation comes out, that'll be your trigger point there for being able to provide a bit of a response and make sure that your feedback is heard by the regulator. So yeah, definitely worth keeping involved if you think that the current regime of shallow discharges presents a barrier for you and for your decarbonisation in your area. So our final slide here, this is about investment in ED2. This is our next regulatory investment period. So up until 2023, our investment in the network has been agreed and signed off by the regulator. We've got a large amount of reinforcement and investment that we're completing on the network. There is an investment map, as Sharon pointed out, on the Energy Data Hub, so you can see which schemes are being completed in your local area. But going forward into ED2, 2023 to 2028, then we're just starting to develop our future investment plans. So if you've got some development in your area within that time period, then you know, we want to know about that, and we want to make sure that the investment that we've got profiled out across that period is going to be able to meet your needs. So we believe that the ED2 period, particularly for a lot of councils who may have declared climate emergencies and are seeking net zero decarbonisation by 2030, then the ED2 period, 2023 to 2028, is a very critical period in terms of that decarbonisation. It means we're going to have to do a lot of work to be able to facilitate that. And we think that the national targets that we've got for net zero will be driven by local decisions on energy system transition completed by local authorities and local councils. We want our business plan to be a bottom-up stakeholder informed plan, and we think that engagement with local authority planning teams is going to be crucial for this. So what we're planning to do, previously we have had our distribution future energy scenario process that has taken all the published information, so all of your local plans, suck that information up and use that to feed into our investment process. We're still going to be continuing that process and mopping up all that information, but we think that we can get more information. We want to present back our future investment plans with you to make sure that what we're doing gives you some confidence that we're developing the network in the right way. And equally, if we've misinterpreted the information or it's out of kilter with how you think you want your decarbonisation plans to progress, then that is the right time to go and get involved with that kind of feedback. So starting in April and working across our local areas, probably across a 2 or 3 month time horizon, out till kind of May, June time, then we're going to be engaging with all the local authorities through our distribution managers to present the information coming out of our distribution future energy scenarios. So looking at the boundary of each local authority, and we cover about 130 local authorities, and discussing them what future investment plans that we've got in 2023, how many electric vehicles, how many heat pumps, how much PV, how much wind we think is going to be connecting in their area. And what we want to do is just get some comfort or some sense check across the local authorities and the LEPs as well of you know, whether we're forecasting the right volumes, whether that is a true reflection of what's happening in those areas. And by doing that, you know, one-to-one engagement at that level, we should be able to see whether our business plan for the next regulatory price control will be sufficient and is going to be providing enough investment in the right areas to help decarbonisation at all levels. So that's something to be on the lookout for. Our distribution managers will be in touch within the April period to be able to kickstart that kind of engagement and start diving down into the numbers. As I say, by the end of March, our online tool will be developed to be able to see and visualize all that information, and all of our distribution managers will have reporting packs to be able to help support that engagement session. So there's a little bit of time now for any questions and answers. Should you, on the webinar there, have any further questions you want to go and ask either me or Sharon about either the Energy Data Hub, access to information, the interactive cost tools, or anything to do with the strategic investment that we're making on the network. So I see we've got a few sort of people, a few questions there that people are trying to raise. I think I can see a few people typing now. So if you've got any questions, then please let us know. So I think, Alex, you've got your hand raised there. I'll try and see if I can send a chat message over to you to see if you want to ask a specific question. There's a question function, and there's also a chat function that you can use within this tool to answer any questions. So we had a few people already ask questions themselves. Got a question here on what types of information that we pick up to feed into our distribution future energy scenarios. So the distribution future energy scenarios are based on the same framework as the national grid's future energy scenarios. So we look at 4 scenarios that cover a kind of slow or no progression, full to a full 2 degrees implementation, so a level of decarbonisation that meets our climate change objectives. And we take those and based on a national level, and then we look at what the mix of generation and demand are. The generation demand are predicted by the local authorities. We then sort of take a view on how likely that is, and try and match it as closely we can to the national future energy scenarios, and then we kind of smooth that trajectory across the whole of our licence area to try and come up with some volumes based on a regional uptake as well. So that's it's quite a significant volume of work, again built from the bottom up, and that should enable us to ensure that our investment plans meet all the needs of all the local authorities, and but also deliver the national ambition as well at the same time. The national ambition is particularly more important for 2030 to 2050, when perhaps some of the local authority plans won't be as detailed out within that timescale. Excellent. So Alex has got a question here. Are estimates of generation at the local authority level matching what we're finding on the ground? I guess yes and no, I guess is the question. So we certainly think that where local authorities have put a vision about how much generation they think they're going to be requiring in those areas, either to decarbonise or to help support some sort of energy system transition. We think that they're quite good indications of what's going to happen in the area, particularly as that will feed its way through into sort of focus areas for that local authority, and perhaps lead to more awareness in planning on the planning level as to what schemes will go ahead and what things can be greenlit. So we think the future looking at estimates of generation are likely to be quite representative, but on a kind of shorter term pipeline, then we think that WPD's nearer time pipeline is probably a more realistic expectation of what's going to be connected, because it has a much wider source of data. So our pipeline shows all the connections that have been discussed with us, and the kind of information and market intelligence from wider business. So any information from industry about where they might be building out particular schemes, that kind of comes through to us and is brought through our pipeline. So it's one of the key things that we're quite keen to share with local authorities, is to share our pipeline of data along with their expectations of what's happening. So hopefully with a few more iterations and engagement sessions with the local authorities on our data sets, then we should get to much better alignment. I think one of the things that we struggle to try and reconcile with local authority developments is the ambition of house building and commercial establishments in local areas, in that if we were to add all of the different developments up that are planned, then they massively exceed the historical build out across those local areas as well. So we really want to try and find which areas are doing a lot of work to try and promote and deliver on their local energy strategies, and which areas need some more help and support from us and from wider industry to be able to realise their final volumes and expectations for that energy system transition. I've got a few more questions here. Just bear with me while I try and find these things. Try and read through the question as I'm talking. So I've got a question here to say that it's good news to hear that we're looking for the LEPs and local authorities to be part of the solution. A question here on how many zeros and how quickly can what the kind of cost implications are for developing it, and whether we've got any thoughts about the tools that we can do to provide some more information to work this out. So certainly, I think this is exactly the type of process that we're really looking to try and to do at the moment. So we obviously have an investment plan that for our current regulatory period that was developed back in 2012. That took our best view as it was then as to what the energy system would require out till 2023. I think we'll have seen from 2012 to where we are now, the 2020, there's been a significant shift in the level of ambition as a country and locally in terms of how important climate change is for us, how much electrification of those technologies will play a part from it. And that has seen a shift on the kind of volumes of technologies that we're going to be seeing connecting into our network. I'm sure most people will be thinking about purchasing, if they purchase the next car, will it be a conventional internal combustion engine or will it be an electric vehicle? And if all of our 7.9 million customers or households connected in our area are also thinking about the same sort of thing, the question is really how quickly do we need to deliver that, and how much will that have an impact on costs? So what we'd really like to try and do is bottom out what that number is individually with the local authorities. So if we can get to a picture whereby we have an idea of the volumes, and our volumes are the same as the local authority volumes, then we can build up what that cost is going to be, and we can take that back to the regulator in our next price control review period to make sure that we've got enough investment in place to be able to complete that energy system transition. So hopefully we're on the same page there. So we'll be very excited to talk to you in the next coming months to try and bottom that out and start getting together a better picture about what the cost implications will be. But certainly we have done some work to try and understand that in previous price control review periods, and we've got some internal tools, so perhaps we can start sharing some of that information. So I'll definitely take that on board as a point and see what information we can do to start providing some estimations about price for delivering capacity as well. Excellent. Okay, so can't see that we've got any more questions coming through. If you have, then please throw them our way. But if you, I suppose we'll flick on to the next slide really about our sort of next steps. So if you want to collaborate further with us, or you think of a particular question that you would like to ask in the webinar but didn't get the chance to do so, then please fire that through to wpdnetworkstrategy@westernpower.co.uk. We'll take a look at it and we'll try and get an answer back to you as quickly as possible. The slides for this and the webinar will be going up on our website towards the beginning of next week, so wait for that. And if you've got any other colleagues that might want to have a look at this, some of the explanations or the detail that we've gone through today, then please feel free to direct them in the direction of that webinar. But I'll thank everyone for their time today, and hopefully you've enjoyed the time Sharon and I have spent presenting to you. And if you've got any further ideas for the types of information that we can go through, please fire them our way and we can include that into one of our next webinars. But hopefully look forward to seeing you either virtually through a webinar or face-to-face at one of our stakeholder events. Thank you very much, and I'll see you shortly.